Monopoly.
What's happening? What's happening?
Tell the people where you from, man.
Chicago, South Side, low end.
All right. So tell us about your family. I don't think people do. The people know that, man. You from the Johnson, like you from a royalty black family, man. Can you explain this to the world?
Sure. My dad and Uncle George and Uncle Robert were partners in a company that my Uncle George started called Johnson Products. It was the first black company in America to go public. Started in Chicago. It was a hair care company. Ultra Sheen, Johnson Products, all that kind of stuff.
And so that's like very instrumental. And that's the green grease, right?
Yeah, the green grease and the kind of...
Yeah, like the pyramid looking joint.
The pyramid looking joint that used to be at the end of every Soul Train episode because my uncle funded Soul Train. He was the first sponsor and gave Don Cornelius the startup capital for Soul Train. So not only did they launch Johnson Products and fund Harold Washington's campaign to become mayor of Chicago, but they also funded Soul Train. So a pretty, historic family, not only in the city of Chicago, but just everywhere.
They didn't do the Carefree Carol, right? That wasn't the yellow and red spray, right?
I don't remember.
Oh. But the Johnson Hair Care products was in every black household, especially in the 80s and 90s.
Absolutely.
100%. So now you ran Chicago, like the party scene. And pretty much it seems like, the whole original like cast members of the Chicago situation, like you was the first to spearhead it. And so tell us about 90s Chicago parties you was throwing.
Yeah, I started off as a promoter in June of 1989. I did my first party. It was an 8th grade graduation party. I was graduating 8th grade, and I was throwing parties and concerts all throughout high school. It's kind of led on to, me being like one of the top promoters, or if arguably the top promoter in the late 90s leading up until 2002 when I moved to New York. But I did a bunch of, firsts in the city. We did Wu-Tang Clan's first show in Chicago in 92, and Del the Funky Homo Sapiens first show in Chicago in 93, and Beat Nuts first show in Chicago in 93, and
wow, 92.
Souls of Mischief's first show in Chicago in 94, I think it was. So many.
You did the
Jay-Z's first show in Chicago, October 3rd, 1996. Foxy Brown's first show in Chicago the same day. Eric Sermon, Keith Murray, Redman, Little Kim and Junior Mafia, Cameron and Jim Jones, like basically the first Diplomat thing in the late 90s, and so many of the, original hip hop 90s stuff, yeah.
What's one of the wildest stories that you could tell from that you remember from back in those days and from that era?
Man, so many wild stories. I remember being 16 years old and going to New York to book the Beatnuts, and going to meet Erskine Isaac, who was their agent at an agency called Famous Artists Agency. And I went into the office, and I'm like, hey, I'm here to meet with Erskine about booking the Beatnuts. So, want to go over negotiating the deal and getting them to deposit. And when I walked in his office, he's like, I thought I had a meeting with the promoter. Who are you? Where's your dad? And I'm like, no, my dad's not the promoter. I'm the promoter. He was like, what are you, 12? I'm like, no, I'm 16. He's like, but I don't understand, like, how you're a kid, like, what's going on? I was like, yeah, I know I'm kind of young, but I'm a real promoter. I showed him some of my flyers, and he ended up, working with me. But there was like a lot of funny stories like that. I remember having my production assistant pick up Jay-Z and Dame Dash from the airport in October 3rd, 1996, when we did his first show at the Click. And when they, got to the hotel, it was a Marriott hotel, which was in the contract. They told my production assistant to take him to the Ritz-Carlton. There was no advance tickets sold, so we were freaking out because we didn't have any money. We were broke. We spent all the money, promoting the show and getting them their front half. But when we got to the Ritz-Carlton, they were like, "We don't need your money." I was like, "Oh, okay." These guys have other sources of revenue. I'll put it that way. That's when I knew what was up with them. You know what I mean? But they were super cool, and funny how things ended up because Kanye actually opened for Jay-Z that night. I was managing Kanye back then, and still work with him to this day. And he opened for Jay that night in '96. They didn't meet, but they were on the same stage. So a lot of just, I remember having a show at Crowbar, I think it was, and it was a Foxy Brown concert. And Corrupt showed up. And I think he either proposed to her at our show or announced that they were getting married at our show. And these were, big, stars, you know what I mean? It was, Corrupt and Foxy, and it was like a whole thing. And then like later on, it was like in the Source magazine or something like that. But the initial information and announcement came from our concert. So, a lot of memories.
Mm-hmm. When did you meet Kanye?
I met Kanye in 1991 through my my brother, Lucian Watkins. He was in a group with Kanye called State of Mind. It was Lucian, Gene, and Ye. I went to like a rehearsal or a studio session or something, and to see Lucian, and just fell in love with first Ye's production and then his raps. And I pretty much started managing him immediately after. And then I think we formed like a production company the next year called Numbskulls in 1992 or something like that.
Wow, so you guys been together a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So he was there before you...
Since we were kids. I met him when he was like 14, 15, something like that.
Wow.
14.
So and then you started working, when did you transfer into the actual music industry? You started working at like Jive Records, the label, or?
Yeah, so I was probably like the number one promoter in the city from like early 90s up until I left in 2002. But I started really getting the mix of like music industry stuff, I would say, in like 98. There were three things. I was on the management team for Carl Thomas, who's up there. And then, traveled all around with him and did a bunch of stuff with Bad Boy through him. And then I did a publishing deal with Bad Boy for a writer from Chicago named McKelly Jameson, who ended up writing a bunch of hits for Faith Evans and Mary J. Blige and Carl. And then I got a job working for one of Puff's producers named Young Lord, who was one of the hitmen. And that was in the late 90s. So I would say I focused, probably like the first 10 years of like me being like a promoter. And then I started to transition that into like proper industry stuff after I kind of mastered that 10 years later. And then I moved to New York in 2002 again for a job at Violator under Chris Lighty, my mentor, who you see over here on the wall. And the job at Violator, I got promoted, and Chris became the head of black music at Jive Records, and he took me with him and gave me like my first like paying label job at Jive as an A&R. But that only lasted not even a year because Kanye was just blowing up crazy, and I was never going in the office. I ended up leaving to just kind of like manage him full time with Don and G and Al and hip hop, and to run his label, Good Music.
Okay. So now, how long did Good Music come into play after he blew up as an artist? Or was it from the start?
I think we got the deal. Well, there were two versions of Good Music. There was a Good Music at Sony, and then that didn't last long. Then we had a deal at Def Jam, which he recently sold his piece back to Def Jam not that long ago. So I'd say, I think we got the Sony thing in 2006. Okay. And it lasted, a couple years. It wasn't like a long thing.
And what year did Kanye Through the Wire, about what year?
2003.
About 2003. Mm-hmm. Wow.
My wife and her sister actually did the Through the Wire release party at 4040 Club in New York in 2003. Yeah, it was 2003. Yeah.
Now, I watched the Genius documentary, and it seemed like Coodie was there from the beginning as well with all the filming that he did. Was that before, was that after you? Or did you know Kanye before Coodie or got all that footage?
Yeah, so Coodie met Kanye through me, and Coodie was my man, still is my man. And I introduced them in the late 90s, and he's been rocking with us ever since. So I was kind of like maybe like the first one in the group there. So, Don C, Virgil, Ivan, Coodie, all those guys, met Ye through me. Wow. Those were my friends, essentially. I actually used to do marketing for Coodie's public access show, which was like hugely popular in the city in the late 90s. It was called Channel Zero. And there's a couple like things online with like Coodie interviewing Kanye and a bunch of celebrities and stuff that were coming through Chicago in the 90s. And I would always just help Coodie and Danny promote the shows. And I had a bunch of concerts and stuff, so I would always try to just give them access to the talent so that they could get content. But yeah, those are all my guys.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you just named some powerful, like, they shook the culture, man. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Don C, Virgil, like, you introduced Virgil to Kanye, which is...
Yeah, so Virgil was kind of my intern. I met him at through another one of my mentors, Jay Boogie. He had a design studio. Boogie introduced us, and I saw some of his work, and I really liked the work that he was doing, which led to me hiring him as a designer for this group named Sarah, from LA actually, that I signed to Good Music, and Virgil was doing some design work for, it was like a mixtape cover or something I was doing with Sarah. And then directly after that, he started just coming over my house after school and after work every day, and just kind of like interning for me, but interning for me personally in my company, Hustle. It wasn't for Good Music or Ye. I was just trying to get to know him, understand his temperament and his style, his attitude, and then get like a full grasp of his skill set to make sure that it was what I thought it was. You know what I'm saying? So after about 4 months, I was like, man, bro, like, you're fucking ready. Like, you're insane. Like, I gotta take you to the crew. So I introduced him to Ivan, who they ended up, they were roommates for a while and became great friends. And Ivan did like some shoe stuff with him. I want to say Ivan's Converse shoe came through Virgil. He did like Ivan collab with Converse. And then I introduced him to Don. They opened a boutique and a brand together called RSVP, which is still popular and popping. They're about to open a new boutique in Chicago within the next coming months, from what I understand. And then I introduced him to Kanye, who he became like a designer, illustrator kind of person at first, and then that went from there to like him being an assistant, then right hand, then collaborator, and then Virgil became the most important designer of our time. So I'm not really a fashion guy, not really the flyest in the room, never claimed to be, but I got a pretty good eye, I'll put it that way.
Well, talent.
I know talent for sure.
Mm-hmm. So that is just mind blowing.
Yeah.
Now, how did he get the job with Louis Vuitton? Like, how did that, because he was working with Kanye.
To be honest, bro, at the time of that whole thing, I wasn't really around. There was I quit working for Kanye in 2008, and I didn't go back to work. I was gone for 10 years. We didn't work together until 2018. I did something with him in 2011 where I took an artist named King Louie that he liked, that was signed to me, that I got signed to Sony. I took him to Paris and he put him on the Yeezus album. And we were supposed to work together again officially after that, but it never happened. So I really wasn't around him and Virgil for a really long time. And I don't know,
So you wasn't around when that infamous picture when what's his name had like the cheetah pants and
No, but funny. So what's the name who you're referring to is Taz. So I signed Taz to Good Music. I introduced Taz to Kanye.
He was on Sarah.
He was in Sarah. So I signed Sarah. So me and Dom joke all the time that if you look at the picture, more than half of the people in the picture came from me. Like Ivan was my barber, Don's my cousin, Kanye, I managed him first, Virgil was my intern, and I signed Taz. Now, I had nothing to do with Bentley or Chris Julian, but everybody else came from me.
It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So now, you said you didn't work with Kanye for 10 years.
Yeah, from 2008 to 2018.
Yeah. If you don't mind me asking, how did that come about? It's like
financial dispute. I'd rather not get into, but I just didn't like how some things were happening and decided to move around.
Yeah. Now, was Hustle already in existence?
Yeah, so we started Hustle in 1998.
Okay. So you pretty much started it hand in hand as soon as you got into the
Hustle period, by the way.
Hustle period. Hustle period. So now you leave Kanye. Does it feel like you're blackballed? Like you maintain relationships. Everybody mess with you, and I kind of feel like everybody kind of felt like they didn't know if you were when you were kind of going to get back together. So no one really picked sides. I can feel,
Yeah.
But how did it feel? Because that was like at the top of Kanye.
Sure. Sure.
So what was going on in like your mind? How did you feel? Did you feel you was like blackballed, or you feel like there was a weird time, or you didn't think nothing of it?
Yeah, it was bad. I mean, to be honest, I felt like I was just a little isolated, and I was watching all these people that, I kind of helped put on, flourish and be successful, and I was going through it. You know what I mean? I couldn't get a lot of opportunities because there was all these things being said, and there were people that were, I'm not going to say he was, I don't think it was him, but there were people that had just been jealous of me being kind of like the number one guy for so long from my city. They wanted to see me fall. So yeah, it was tough. So it was hard to get work and opportunities, and you know, it was really frustrating for a while because you know I'm literally watching, you know, 6-7 people that I put on get money and do well and flourish, and nobody offered me a sandwich. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, but okay, you know, but it's all good. I mean, it taught me to be resilient and to dust myself up and get off and get back on. And you know, I was definitely on some, like, for a short moment, a little self-pity. Like, oh man, these dudes, blah, 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 put this dude on, that dude on, I made these guys all this money, gave them their diddy bop, and they didn't even offer me a meal, you know what I mean? I'm out here, you know, fucked up, blah, blah, blah. But I got over it quick and just started grinding all over again, you know what I mean? And, you know, went from, you know, damn near homeless to a multi-million-dollar home. You know what I mean? So,
we're in a multi-million-dollar home.
A $3 million home.
Exactly. So now, what was the first play that, like, you felt like gave you, like, your optimism back? Like, after that, because you know you did some multiple historical things in between you dropping from leaving Kanye and then coming back. You know, you've done some multiple things. I'm seeing a plaque right behind you.
I think the first thing after Ye was Busta Rhymes, A-Rap Money. I was a part of that whole project. I A&R'd that album and I was on his management team.
I remember that.
And I was making, you know, starting to kind of get back on my feet, starting to get respect again. You know how it is when you get a hit record and you're with somebody that's completely detached. I mean, you know, not associated with your core. It's like an automatic level of respect. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, it's one thing to be the man in Chicago since '89 and then discover the hottest thing in Chicago ever and then control your hometown, but then to fall out with all that, right, and disconnect from all that, be in New York, get back on with a new job, and then come back with another hit from a New York rapper that has nothing to do with Kanye and nothing to do with good music and nothing to do with any of those people, you know, and to find myself back around a lot of those same people in those same circles with a completely different and separate circumstance. That was one of those things that was like, okay, you were meant to do this. It wasn't a fluke. Get your confidence back up. You are a winner. You're winning now again. Keep moving forward. And that's what I did. You know, I worked with Busta for a while. We got a hit. We went on the road. Did a lot of great things together. You know, started working with Missy again because I had some history with Missy Elliott, whereas we did a project for Monica, that project up there, and I gave her the 3 records that became the singles on that project, and they all were hits. And one of them went on to be a top 5 hit. And so I started working with Missy, and then I got an opportunity via a good friend of mine named Tony De Niro, where he's like, listen, I'm a partner in this social media platform. It's called Feed. You know, I want you to be a consultant. If you can close, I think it was like 10 deals or something like that, I'll talk the owner into putting you on full time. I'll get you a check, you know what I mean? And then I'll get you a full-time gig, you know what I mean? You know, with equity and, like, you know, and you can come to LA. So I focused on that. We went to New York. I got him more than 10 clients, right? And the owner's like, you're hired. You know what I mean? I'll give you equity, I'll give you a salary, this and the third. So then I moved to LA and went from there. Started just rebuilding slowly but surely.
Now, when did Shawnna DTP?
Shawnna, yeah. Shawnna was 2006.
Okay.
That was funny. So I remember going to my big homie Shorty Capone's house. I went to XL's house, who was managed and still is managed by Shorty Capone.
That's a friend of my father's.
Huh?
Shorty Capone's a friend of my father's.
Absolutely. Yeah. He know Bob. Yep. The OGs all know each other.
The OGs.
So I went to XL's crib, and me and him are just digging through beats for hours and hours and hours. It must have been like 4 or 5 hours. We just wouldn't stop, and we finally found that one beat, because XL had, hundreds of beats, and we found a beat, and I'm like, I know this record's nasty, but it's gonna go platinum. He's like, you think? I said, this is a hit. And then I went to Shorty and I said, listen, you guys got a hit record, but I need you to give me the beat on credit, because the little money that I have saved up, I want to work the record and get it going at Mix Show so I can make Def Jam pick it up and make it the official single. So Shorty, being my man, he's like, okay, I won't charge you right now, but you got to make it work. So I had like 17 grand or something like that. And I bootlegged my own record. And what I mean by that was, back in the day, this was, 2006, it was like 20 years ago, you used to have these CD pros, which was like a little CD single that radio promotion guys would service to radio stations to get their records played on the radio. And we were getting no attention from Def Jam, not really a lot of attention from DTP at the time, more resistance than attention. And I took the DTP logo, put it on the CD. I put the Def Jam logo, put it on the CD. I put the Hustle logo and put it on the CD. And then I hired TJ from TJ's DJs, who is like an OG record promoter, managed B.O.B. and K-Camp, and just like a well-respected industry guy. And my team, Happy, and my whole crew. And I bootlegged the record essentially, and I lied to radio stations and was like, yeah, this is our new single from Def Jam, blah, 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 but it wasn't. It was just a hot record that I framed as if it was coming from the label, but it was coming from me. It wasn't coming from any label. And I was paying DJs to get it going, because I knew that if I could just get a little spark, it would take. And then it got so hot, we got this remix. Lil Wayne was on the remix. Pharrell was on the Pharrell's hottest verse ever is on my remix. If you ever go to YouTube and put in, Getting Some remix featuring Pharrell, Lil Wayne, and Ludacris, you'll hear it was insane. So yeah, it was I kind of conned the system, and it worked. We ended up selling, 1.6 million copies, and made Def Jam close to $2 million off the single, and then it drove and saved the sales of a compilation album. So we made a couple $1 million.
Now, when you say Def Jam, I saw it was Disturb the Peace. It was like Ludacris. Now.
Yeah, so Disturbing the Peace was the furnishing company. Def Jam was the partner, the distributor, essentially. Yeah.
So now, did you guys work it with Def Jam and then they put it with DTP, or were you?
No, they were already. She was always signed to DTP.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the whole deal was always DTP Def Jam. It was a joint venture.
Okay.
Yeah, so we were technically just a marketing company, but we were acting as a third partner, although we weren't compensated as a third partner, but we were acting as a third partner by creating the record, marketing the record, promoting the record, A&Ring the record, and executive producing the record. Yeah. So, but that's just how we moved. We were just by any means necessary. We had a client, we believed in them. Shawnna, 20 years later, is still getting shows here and there off of that record. You know what I mean? So I'm glad it worked out.
Now, how did Trinidad James
Trinidad James was something I saw on World Star. Remember World Star?
Yeah.
So I saw Trinidad's video for All Gold Everything the first day it came out. And I said, this song is going platinum. I told my man, I said, now I don't know if he has a follow-up. I don't know if it's the real thing. But this song is going platinum. So what happened was I called all around Atlanta, and there was a guy named Amir who used to work a lot of records for Grand Hustle, and just like, like an Atlanta radio guy. And I knew him just, from being in the business. I finally got up with Amir and I said, listen, there's this kid, named Trinidad James. He has this thing. I want to see if I can get involved. And I believe the label is called Think It's a Game, TIG. And then he's like, oh yeah, I know the guy, blah, blah, blah. His name's Fly, he's cool. I'll plug you with him. So I ended up cultivating a relationship with Fly and, talking, whatever. And me and a friend of mine named Kennard Carter, who used to be the program director at WGCI, which is the big iHeart station in Chicago. Kennard was friends with Ghazi, who I didn't know at the time. And I can't remember everything because it was so long ago, but somehow we got the record to Ghazi and then got Fly to Ghazi and brokered the initial distribution deal for All Gold Everything through Empire before they signed to Def Jam. So for a brief moment, I was getting, royalties and stuff. Very small amount, you know what I mean? But it was more of like a positioning play for me, you know what I mean? And yeah, so that's how it happened. I literally saw it on World Star and just attacked immediately and just didn't stop calling my friends in Atlanta until I got a phone number on this guy, Fly. And Fly is, my guy to this day. And he's successful. He broke Rich Homie Quan and Wife and Lucci, and he's doing his thing.
Damn. All right, so we get to go All Gold Everything. Kanye, 2018, you get back with Kanye. Mm-hmm. How did that come about?
How did it come about? I had just found this kid in Chicago who's really buzzing, named Valet. And I was trying to just figure out how to get into business with him. And there were other labels kind of circling around. And I had been wanting to get back with Ye, but it just needed the right timing, you know what I mean? So I took him, at the time his favorite restaurant was Nobu Malibu. And I took him to lunch at Nobu Malibu. And the bill came, and I could tell that people that are well off a lot of times pay attention to people expecting them to cover certain things. But as his friend, and I hadn't seen him in a while, I insisted to pay the bill. And he was like, oh man, that was so nice. And he just I don't know, I guess he was impressed that, I was just trying to put my best foot forward. And I told him he's like, let's go to the next place, which was Rick Rubin's house. I'm like, okay, no problem. He's like, I'm gonna ride with you. I was like, okay. He's like, what you driving? I was like, this Porsche. He said, I got that Porsche. I was like, word now, I knew this. You know what I'm saying? You know, I kind of like, you know, was waiting until I got my Panamera to go see him. You know what I'm saying? Because I didn't want to look broke. You know, so just being honest. I'm just being honest. You know, so. I heard him on the phone, so I was like, yeah, I'm with Manop. He got a Porsche like me, and we just was laughing, you know. And he's like, so what you doing? I was like, well, I'm consulting this, doing that, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, I got a new act that I'm, you know, looking at, kind of trying to sign. There's a lot of people trying to sign him, whatever. So his name is Valet. He's like the new hot kid out of Chicago. He's like, well, how you going to sign him with somebody else but me? I'm your man. Well, I was like, well, I would love to sign him with you. He ended up signing him. And that was like the first kind of thing that we did. And then I kind of like just started consulting at first. And then it went from me, you know, signing that kid to consulting to full-time job to running the new situation to coming on as a manager again. And just kind of kept going up and up and up and up. So yeah, that's basically how it happened.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And then how long was that after when you got the Lamborghini on TMZ? Everybody saw he gifted you with the Lamborghini truck on TMZ, man. That was big.
He gave me the Lamborghini maybe 3 years after, 3 or 4. I don't remember. And then he gave me the Cybertruck last year.
Wow, he's a very nice guy, huh? Very giving person.
He can be. Yeah, he can be.
So now Kanye is to me is the biggest genius. No one's ever done what he's done in pop culture history. No one's ever been canceled and then uncanceled. And I mean, I don't even know where he stands, but I feel like he's like untouchable in a way because he's just too authentically him. You know? Now, how does that work for business? Because I know you guys do a lot of business, but it's probably different business, right? Is he bigger more internationally than he is in America?
I would say he's big everywhere, you know, just in general. There are more, you know, challenges, I would say, in the U.S. for him with certain businesses and initiatives that he's involved with, but he's definitely not a local artist. I mean, he's, you know, one of our few global megastars.
And now, how many, you ain't gotta name no names, but like, is there a lot more significant people that's in support and in agreement of kind of where Kanye stands, but they will never like state it to the public? And in some aspects, they actually are one of the people talking shit to him in public, but behind closed doors, it's kind of like they with him.
I'm sure there are, but I'd rather not comment.
I love it. So, we was talking about Virgil earlier, and I kind of wanted to ask this. Where were you when you found out what happened to him? And do you think there's something more sinister, or you think there's more to his death?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't think it's, but I really don't know. And I just landed at LAX. I don't remember from where, but, and I called Don immediately. I'm like, yo, is this true? I'm seeing it all over the, you know, internet. He was like, man, this is crazy. But you know, I wouldn't know if there was something more sinister. I don't think so, but I don't know.
And then there's another one. You said Chris Lighty. How was that? What do you think about? Do you feel there's anything sinister about that one? Like, doesn't that shit feel weird too, man?
I mean, I've heard a lot of rumors and stuff like that. I just don't know. You know, I don't know enough about it. Chris was my man. I mean, my brother, my big brother. You know, he always looked out for me and changed my life completely. But yeah, I just really don't know.
You really don't know. So now, what's the future with you and Hustle?
Man, you know, we have our lifestyle brand, Hustle Period, the apparel company. Is doing well. We actually are in the process of, you know, we do all these events all over and with different, you know, liquor partners and stuff like that. And now we're forming a long-term partnership with a spirits brand that I'd rather not name. And I just signed Max B, who's coming home November 9th. And we're planning a big welcome home show in New York City, so I'm excited about that.
And when does he come home again?
November 9th this year.
November 9th.
Mm-hmm. I have an agency called Best Served Cold. We're working on a bunch of, you know, just agency work from a marketing and strategic partnership standpoint. I have an initiative called Corner Store that I don't want to get into too much, but you're about to see a lot of cool stuff in the corner store space. Remember that name. A hospitality group that I'm a part of, and we're launching some venues and restaurants in different markets. A bunch of stuff, a bunch of projects that I'm really excited about. So.
And damn, that's big. So Chicago, Larry Hoover. I was listening to a video with Larry Hoover's son, and he's thanking and pretty much he basically said, you know, thanks to Kanye, this is he's one of the reasons that this kind of came together.
Mm-hmm.
How long have you and Kanye been working on the Larry Hoover initiative?
Oh my God. I don't even know how long. So, I mean, I would say over a decade, but, you know, I grew up with Lil Larry and I've been friends with Miss Wendy, Lil Larry's mom, and Larry Sr.'s wife for, you know, 35 years. And, you know, we've always supported each other and had each other's back for, you know, almost 4 decades. So I'm just so happy that there's finally some progress.
And now I was excited to hear that he was out, but then I'm starting to see some more information. He's technically, like, it seems like they're still trying to, like,
he's out the Fed.
Yeah, but he's not free.
No.
So is there still a chance that he may not get free?
I really don't know. I mean, I don't want to jinx it. I just hope they let him all the way out as soon as possible.
Okay. So, and now Chicago has blown up, and it says drill is started in Chicago,
Mm-hmm.
and now you got New York drill,
Mm-hmm.
and you got UK drill. This is all a Chicago sound.
Mm-hmm. If you listen to the Don't Like remix, which was Chief Keef's first big record, Kanye remixed it. Excuse me. Kanye remixed it, and on the remix, Kanye says, Chief Keef, King Louie, this is Shy, right? Mm-hmm. So Chief Keef and King Louie were kind of the forefathers. Well, technically, Pac-Man is the godfather of drill, but he passed away years ago. Chief Keef and King Louie were the pioneers, the the people that kind of like launched and popularized drill from a global perspective.
Now explain Pac-Man. I never heard of this.
Yeah, so Pac-Man was a guy from the South Side who I think was the first person to ever use the word drill. I'd have to ask and some of my youngins to.
And what year was that?
I don't know, but King Louie was his guy, and King Louie was an artist that I actually got signed to Sony through a partnership, and it's my guy.
All right, man. Well, man, thank you for giving us your time.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Having a good conversation, talking about your history in Chicago.
Chicago.
And man, we're gonna do another one soon, man.
Absolutely, man. Whenever you want, man.